contractor is under arrest this morning, accused of leaking a classified NSA report on Russia to the media.
I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. I want people in handcuffs, and I want to see people behind bars.
Somebody who leaks documents against the law has got to suffer the consequences. This is mind-blowing.
One of the suspects on their radar, and maybe for a while. So how did he slip through yet again?
You're not working on your tan when you're going to Syria or Iraq. You are there because you are involved with bad actors.
You can have all the security in the world, but if that security shows up after the fact, the lives have already been lost.
President Trump will not stop fired FBI Director James Comey from testifying before Congress this week.
Here, there's one question. Did the president obstruct justice? That's what everybody is waiting for.
Our nation will move faster, fly higher, and soar proudly toward the next great chapter of American aviation.
Welcome aboard, folks. Day 2 in Studio F. It's Fox and Friends from a mezzanine level of Studio F in the heart of Midtown Manhattan.
How long is the lease? Like, you say day 2. Like, how far are we along on this? Because does it expire in the summer? Is it the end of the week, end of the concert series?
We own this place.
We do. All right, good.
I hope it's for a very long time. But according to Saturday Night Live, I'm only going to be here for 2 years.
Right,
so I have a few more months left in the new studio.
Right. A lot of stuff they say on SNL turns out not to be true.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, it is June 6th, 2017, and yesterday the federal government made good on something that Donald Trump said he would do, and that is going to find these leakers, and we're going to bring them to justice. And yesterday we saw the images of a 25-year-old Bernie Sanders supporter by the name of Reality Winner, her actual name, who had top-secret clearance, worked for Pluribus International Corporation down in Georgia. She was arrested and will be charged under the Espionage Act.
Have we learned one thing from the Edward Snowden fiasco, where all of our, so many of our secrets left with this private contractor? Now we find out this person detested, judging by their social media posts, detested Donald Trump, and determined to bring Donald Trump down, I imagine, leaked information about what the Russians did or didn't do to certain voting machines, or attempted to do.
All right,
come election day.
Let's find out who she is. She's 25 years old. She's very young. She spoke a lot of languages. Her mom said she spoke Farsi, Dari, and Pashto, Middle Eastern languages, because she was a linguist for the U.S. Air Force. She was a Bernie Sanders supporter, as you've mentioned. She put that all over her Twitter. And part of the movement to resist Trump, one of her Twitter post says #resistance.
You know, it's interesting how they found her. The Intercept published the information, and she was arrested essentially within an hour that it went online. What they did was they published the document, and it looked like it was folded. And they said, you know what, that was probably printed by somebody, and walked out. So the federal government looked at how many people had printed that document. The number was 6. And then they went through her hard drive and found that she had an email to the Intercept. Went and talked to her, and she said, yep, I did it. Also, there are a number of stories about how printers can actually tell exactly what printer was used for something like this and who did it.
That's fascinating.
They looked at that as well.
Good.
It's scary. I mean, if you think she's the only one? Do you think how many people are Perry? Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. She actually put it in the mail and sent it to this media outlet. So she intentionally did this. It wasn't like she printed it out, read it. She talked to some friends at a barbecue. She's 25 years old.
Oh, no. Just like Edward Snowden meant it. She meant it. This was her agenda, trying to hurt what she thinks is helping the country. She's clearly hurting the country. And according to Congressman Jason Chaffetz, chairman for a couple more days of oversight, she's going to jail.
I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter what administration. When you have classified information, you cannot put that out there just because you think it would be a good idea. I want people in handcuffs, and I want to see people behind bars. If guilty, she will be wind up behind bars. Meanwhile, the other side of the idea is Tim Kaine, who lost to be vice president. He says the people have a right to know these secrets. Listen to this.
Somebody who leaks documents against the law has got to suffer the consequences, but the American public is also entitled to know the degree to which Russia invaded the election to take the election away from American voters, and whether anybody with the campaign or the transition of the Trump administration was working with the Russians to sell out the country.
Right.
Absolutely have a right to know, but the FBI, we've got some Senate and some House committees, they're looking into it. A 25-year-old woman with a postage stamp from Augusta, Georgia, not the way to do it.
And he knows better. Doesn't he know better? I mean,
I don't know what he's talking about exactly.
Yeah, what exactly is he talking about? He's saying that, okay, it's okay for a 25-year-old operative or private contractor to, if they see something interesting, send it to an outlet in which they find that they would like to read or audience would like to read. So as people investigate, maybe if they're investigating something that Tim Kaine likes, maybe he will not be as amenable to somebody leaking out information along the investigation.
I wonder what his stance would be if he were the vice president. Would he have even cared about these leaks at that point? I wanted to know more about the company she worked for, too. They have 22 employee locations all over the world. The one in Georgia is at Fort Gordon, and I went on their website. It says they specialize in government customers in the defense, security, and intelligence community sectors that directly support the fulfillment of U.S. national security objectives. Some of their clients, this is pretty scary, the information she had her hands on, come from the defense, some of the clients, current and past clients of this company: Defense Intelligence Agency, Office of Counterintelligence, U.S. Army Intelligence Security Command, Missile Defense Agency, and one more I'll read is the U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM. This is intelligence information, classified information that she is sharing with the media. That is illegal.
Well, she had top secret clearance, and so she has her fingers on all that stuff.
So did Private Manning. Remember who Private Manning had access to and totally cut our knees out, and actually Hillary Clinton's State Department out by releasing all those missives, then Edward Snowden? And then if you think that this is it, you're dreaming.
Do you think she'll go to jail for the full 10 years? Do you think they'll use her since this is the first leaker that's found?
If found guilty, definitely. All right. Meanwhile, cover the New York Post. We're talking about the London Bridge attack, and the headline is, how could they miss this guy? This is the fella who was in that documentary that we told you about yesterday, the jihadis next door, flying the black flag of ISIS. Turns out he actually worked in the subway and had access to the tunnels under Parliament. He was on the radar of MI5, but they say now that they are trying to figure out what went wrong, there was no evidence of him planning an attack, which, as it turns out, was wrong because he did plan an attack and execute.
This is what got me. So they aired this documentary on a British TV network, Channel 4, and in the documentary, he's in the park with some of his friends, and they are praying to a black flag. Imagine if that happened here in the U.S. Imagine. We would be on him like white on rice. We would find out who he is, where he is, and he'd be investigated at least.
Well, the thing is, though, he was in a free speech section. He was worshiping one of the imams there who preaches nothing but hate. He was on a documentary, proud to be there. His neighbors had called him in, so this guy's out of control. I've had a bunch of confrontations with him, but still, for some reason, MI5 didn't feel empowered or somehow assessed him as not dangerous. Man, were they wrong. In terms of the other guy, right now, we can't figure it out. He's got links to Ireland, married a woman in Scotland of Libyan descent, comes back, and right now, his background seems to be pretty clean, but I'm sure they'll find something else.
Well, this one lady, Erica Gasberry, according to one news outlet, she was the neighbor, and she confronted one of these guys because he was trying to indoctrinate her kids at a local park.
That's Kareem Butt.
Offering sweets to the kids, how to play football.
Trying to brainwash the child, and the child came home and said, Mom, I was listening to him, and now I want to be a Muslim. That's what she said. Meanwhile, at least one of these guys that we know of was radicalized. Sounds like online. The guy was born in Pakistan, raised in Great Britain, but he was radicalized after watching a number of YouTube videos. And they say that Google is now refusing to remove a number of the vile rants. And one politician over this said Google is aiding and abetting terrorists by leaving this vile stuff online. And they're the two images of the two terrorists who we know of.
Yeah, these two terrorists, one guy's name is Jabril. He's Palestinian-American, and evidently he just talks about hate, talks about how moderate Muslims should be killed. Those without beards should be murdered. And in terms of Google, Facebook, and Twitter, there's one of these guys, their rants are still up. And the question is, should Google, Facebook, Twitter, all these social media sites be responsible, have monitors to pull this stuff down? And that's what Britain wants.
Well, they say they need to have a report from somebody complaining, and then they've got a review board, and they'll figure out whether or not it is inappropriate. What happens, though, is because these sites have the most eyeballs, is people go there, see what the people are talking about, and then start to follow them. And then Google will kick them off, and they'll go to some other smaller site, which is encrypted. Then they still get all the vile and the hate, but then nobody knows what they're watching.
Does Google not have a way to, if you post some sort of a language or wording online, they get flagged and they see this guy could be dangerous?
They got people, they got algorithms. It is disappointing that, that particular pair of hate preachers been viewed more than 1 million times. Some of the stuff still online.
They call the whole thing a daunting task, and they're working on it. That may be not be good enough. We'll have to see. Meanwhile, Jillian's here with the latest news. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good Tuesday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. And we do begin with a Fox News alert right now. ICE is taking credit for an Australian terror standoff that left 1 man dead and 3 police officers hurt. Police killing the 29-year-old Somali refugee in a shootout after they say he lured a woman into an apartment building where he held her hostage and shot a man dead. The suspect, a known criminal on parole, had been acquitted of plotting a terror attack at a Sydney Army base in 2010. Well, the disgruntled worker who murdered his former colleagues singled out his victims. Police say John Robert Newman Jr. shot 5 people in the head at an awning company in Orlando before taking his own life. Police say the gunman had a negative relationship with at least one of those former coworkers. Newman was fired from the company in April. He had a criminal record, and among his victims, a widower raising 2 teenage daughters on his own. Major changes coming to the VA. Secretary David Shulkin announcing the department will adopt the same electronic health record system that the Pentagon uses. The move aims to improve coverage for vets and better serve their medical needs after they leave the military. President Trump praising the decision.
This is one of the biggest wins for our veterans in decades, and I congratulate Secretary Shulkin for making this very, very important decision.
Secretary Shulkin says the VA will spend up to 6 months planning the new system. And in just a few hours, Vice President Mike Pence will give the keynote speech at the 13th annual National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. More than 1,000 people are expected to be gathering at that event that's going to happen today and pray for the direction and leadership of this country. So look at your headlines, guys.
So he'll have a busy morning?
Yes, he will.
Right.
He grew up Catholic, too.
Yep.
All right.
Good.
Jillian, thank you. Meanwhile, straight ahead on this Tuesday, if your child chooses a different gender and you don't like that, is it child abuse? A new law actually going on the books ahead that you're going to want to hear about.
And the U.S. finally on the offensive in the fight against ISIS. So what does that strategy look like? Retired Admiral James Stavridis, who was the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, is here to break it down.
How are you?
So he's also got a brand new book out. Great to see you, Admiral.
Born to be wild.
You watched, you know what's going on right now. You know that you have faith in General Mattis.
I do.
What is the need? How do we take out ISIS as quickly as possible?
I'll tell you 3 things very quickly. We need to up our hard power game in Mosul and in Raqqa. We've got to complete those 2 operations. That's special forces, more precision-guided bombing using our allies.
Using Iraq
absolutely crucial. Number 2, we've got to go after their finances. That's cutting off the smuggling, going after their cyber criminal activity.
To this date, have we yet? In an aggressive way?
We have not, particularly on the smuggling. So that's a huge way to really choke off the money, Brian. And number 3, we've got to go at them very hard in the cyber world because they get a lot of their funding from that piece of it. So 3 discrete steps. If we take those, we're going to be able to really neck them down.
Any indication that we're moving in any of those areas? After all, they're a phone call away for you.
They are moving in those areas. And in fact, Secretary Mattis, who is the perfect guy for this, he's spent his lifetime fighting in this region, is pushing constantly to up that game. We're probably going to send a few more thousand troops there. That's the right thing to do.
New book out called Sea Power, The History of Geopolitics on the World's Oceans. Cold War ends. We had this huge Navy. We said we don't need it. Let's cut it back. What's happened since?
Unfortunately, the Russians have upped their game. They're going to deliver 100 ships into their Navy over the next 3 or 4 years. The Chinese have built a serious blue water navy, and the oceans are not an American lake anymore. That's what I write about in Sea Power. We've got to rebuild our fleet.
Why do we care?
Because the oceans carry 95% of the world's commerce, because it's where our allies connect with us, and above all, Brian, it's where we're going to have the big geopolitical confrontations of the 21st century.
We do not have a Secretary of the Navy confirmed right now, but they have to go in and go to battle, so to speak, for a part of this budget to rebuild this. The president said the 1980s, Mitt Romney called. They want their foreign policy back when he called for building more ships. Admiral, what's your message?
Well, first of all, I think President Obama would like to have that line back because he's going to be hearing it for the rest of his life. Mitt Romney was exactly right. Russia threatens us. We only have 275 ships in the U.S. Navy, Brian. We need a minimum of 350. That's got to get done over the next 10 years. We need a Secretary of the Navy in place to do this. Trump administration has spoken proudly about doing this. Let's see what happens.
You know, the Great Britain was a superpower purely because of their Navy, and America came back that way. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Admiral. Congratulations on Sea Power. I'll talk to you more about it on radio.
Sounds great, Brian.
All right. Meanwhile, coming up straight ahead. A brand new corruption investigation just launched into, get this, the Clintons. And Democrats on the Hill shifting the support of single-payer health care. Is that going to work? Dr. Safier's here. She says that system won't work as far as she can tell. She'll chat about it with Ainsley unless she gives her the cold shoulder, which could happen.
All right, now time for some quick headlines on this Tuesday morning. First up, 2 states now considering new laws that would do away with concealed carry permits. North Carolina lawmakers will vote this week on whether or not to allow adults 18 and older to carry guns. Right now, they must be 21. Similar proposal is also under consideration in the state of Michigan. Both states already allow open carry. And if you don't support your child's gender identity, the government can take your child away. That's now the law in Ontario, Canada. The new measure considers it a potential form of child abuse. Critics call the new law totalitarian. All right, Ainsley, over to you and the doctor.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve. Well, Democrats now seem to be shifting far left on health care and latching onto a single-payer system. But is that really the way to go? Dr. Nicole Saphier joins us live now. Hey, Dr. Saphier.
Hi, good morning.
You're welcome. So, thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
A single-payer system is just a government-owned insurance plan, right?
Exactly.
Why do Democrats want this?
You have a lot of people advocating for Medicare for all right now, but that is not what a single payer is. Actually, our existing Medicare system has high quality care because it is offset by the 170 million Americans who are privately insured. If you take away that private sector, it's not Medicare for all, it's more a cost rationing, and so it's Medicaid for all. And with that, you're going to see drastic reduction in choice of the physicians you're able to see, and extensively long wait times. You know, in the United States, people get upset because it can take up to 47 days to go and see a neurosurgeon. Do you know in Canada, it can take up to 47 weeks
and at that
to
point,
see a
it's
neurosurgeon?
too late in some cases.
Not necessarily, but for some people, you're right. It could be a temporary treatable disease or injury, and now all of a sudden, not only do you have lost wages from being out of work, but this condition make it worse. And in addition to these long wait times, you know, in the United States, we see these high technology, cancer centers, treatment centers popping up everywhere. We have access to the best technology. When you're rationing things, that's the first thing that's going to be cut by budgets. In Canada, or in the United States, you have more MRI and PET scans in, say, New York City or in these large cities than they do in entire Canadian provinces. So all of a sudden, what you're used to being able to just go and get an MRI, now you may wait up to a year to get that MRI.
Wow.
And then any savings that you have in terms of your premium, copay, deductible is just going to be offset by increased taxes and payroll deductions. So now there is a place for government in healthcare. We need robust support for our VA systems, Medicaid systems, Medicare systems. But we need to maintain that private sector. It's very important to do that.
Well, I've done so many stories on the VA, and you mentioned long wait times. I went out to Arizona where they're having so many problems at the VA
My
hospital.
home state.
Yeah, and we did talk to families who said their parents or their loved ones were on a list for so long that they died because of their diseases or their illnesses because they couldn't get into the VA.
And that may become the new normal if we go towards
That
this
is
single-payer
crazy.
system.
That is crazy. Why? I know the majority of doctors do not like this single-payer system. Why is that?
The altruistic side of physicians, we want insurance for everybody. We want to treat everybody. However, when you start rationing costs, you will see fewer people going into specialties, radiology, neurosurgery, surgeries in general, and become more general practitioners.
Yeah, why go to school for 15 years when you can make the same amount and go to school for 3 years?
Sure. As I said, it's very important to have some aspect of government in healthcare, because if you only had private sector, you'd be very cost efficient in healthcare, but people would suffer. So it needs to be a fine balance. We need to promote the market share for private insurers, give people choice, but less big government in healthcare. We see how they run healthcare, and that's the VA system. Okay, let's give it to the healthcare professionals. Let's allow patients choice, and then let's just get big government out. They have more important things to deal with right now. If you watch the news any day, national, international security. But let's keep healthcare to the professionals and get big government out, more patient care.
Dr. Saphier, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
This guy defies gravity and goes viral after skidding right out of a water slide. The moment is incredible, but is it real? We report, you decide. And police had them on the radar, and they were even featured on national TV in a documentary. So why were the London Bridge terrorists allowed to radicalize in plain sight? Aaron Cohen, a former member of Israel's counterterror unit, is up next to answer those questions. But first, happy birthday to actor Paul Giamatti. He is 50 years old today. Happy birthday, Paul. Go up those stairs right there, and you'll find us. You can see the curvy couch. We're waving to you from behind.
We're in the process of installing an escalator because my quads are getting too big. I'm going to have to redo my pants. I'm going to let out my thighs.
Over there is Aaron Cohen. Aaron is a former member of Israel's Special Operations Counterterrorism Unit and founder of Cherries, a leading manufacturer of law enforcement products for terrorism readiness. Good to have you here on the brand new curvy couch.
Good to be here. Excellent couch.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like we're all connecting.
Right. Aaron, the thing that's so astounding to all of us is that how one of these attackers, the 27-year-old nicknamed Abs, was hiding in plain sight. An ISIS flag in the park, appearing on a documentary about terror, trying to radicalize children. What else does he need to do? Educate us. This is what you do for a living.
Well, you think there'd be some surveillance at this point right now. Some cell phones would be downloaded. There'd be a lot of eyes not only looking at him, but looking at anybody that he's talking to, and those phones would be getting tracked. This is an intelligence business. The moment of red flag indicators, which is what we call it at El Al, the moment we're behaviorally profiling someone who's waiting in line to board the flight, we look for what's called red flags or micro ticks. This isn't a micro tick. This was a macro tick. This was a beast. ISIS flags is pride. That is, I'm aligned with this organization, this terrorist group. I'm proud of it. And, it's so delusional to not start stacking on some surveillance that it almost feels like an intelligence failure.
Aaron, what if this happened here? How would our intelligence community handle this?
Well, they would do the same thing we do in Israel immediately. Somebody would see the flag, they'd call it into law enforcement. The local guys would call the feds, and the the FBI would probably loop in their international counterparts, start running the license plates, start looking at the address, start cross-referencing all the databases. You start putting together a mosaic, and then start surveilling them.
But this guy is, when you look at the arc of the terrorism over the last 3 months in Great Britain, perpetrators from each of those deals were on the radar of MI5, so they knew about this. This guy somebody had dropped a dime on this guy before. This guy apparently had connections to the 7/7 bombers. And yet, so when people are calling in, they're going, I think my neighbor's a terrorist, but then there's the aura of political correctness, and it's like, oh.
Well, I don't know. Is there in Britain?
I think so. I think that there's a large Muslim community inside of Britain in some of these pockets and some of these, and people are afraid to say no-go zones. No, there's no-go zones that you can't actually go into. Law enforcement won't go in there.
Britain denies that.
They can deny it all they want, but they can't deny what just happened. They can't deny what just happened in London on the bridge, and they can't deny what just happened in front of that cafe or on that street with all those people and the multiple people who were injured. So I think there's a lot of I think the political correctness in Britain is even worse than the States because that's just British.
But you get the sense that Theresa May says this has to stop, that we have been too tolerant. She's been too tolerant because she's been in charge since 2010 as Interior Minister. But they say there's 20,000 people who have suspected terrorist ties, and 300 are being surveilled directly right now. So this is no small country. It's a much more challenging than Israel.
It's colossal. And I just tell you, to surveil one person can take several dozen people. To surveil 20,000, let me make it really clear. The Brits do not possess the capabilities to be able to tackle the terrorist intel job that they have to do. They don't have the capabilities. The Americans, here I think we do. In Israel, It's very expensive and it costs a lot of time and manpower. But here's the deal with the terror. Intel. It's the most important thing. The reason why Scotland Yard, the FBI, great investigators. We're great at looking at everything afterwards and figuring out who committed the crime. I don't care. I don't care if the guy's connected to ISIS, and I don't care if he's connected on Twitter and has no connection to them, and he's got a little knife in his hand, and all of a sudden he jumps into a van and gets on a London Bridge, which is a major national landmark with no bollards on it and only 2 access points with 0 police presence.
And he had bombs in the van, by the way, Molotov cocktails.
Listen, everybody understands that you can be very dangerous with a little bit of weaponry, and so I don't care whether it's a major connection or if it's just one of these known wolves or lone wolves or whatever they're calling them now. The outcome is the same,
Aaron,
which means the profiles have to be created through the intel.
There's so many liberals here that say they want open borders. They want everyone to be able to come in. We're not going to vet. We're going to be a loving society. We need to do everything in love. But you look at what's happening in London, and that's going to be us. And that's what the president is saying. If we don't get tighter on our border, and that's why the president wants this ban on the countries.
Agreed.
He tweeted, he said, that's right. We need a travel ban for certain dangerous countries, not some politically correct term that won't help us protect our people.
This country, let me tell you something, and I spent my whole 20s in Israel. I'm an American who served in the IDF. I used to, work plainclothed. Israel's a very diametrically opposed country when it comes to politics, but when it comes to security, everyone's on the same page. I need Donald Trump to do whatever he's got. He's got to reach in there, and he's got to start pulling this left over. And he's got to start speaking to them and connecting with them somehow. I don't know how. But for the greater good of the macro protection of this country, given the fact that the borders are wide open, we can't even enforce a travel ban. They call it a Muslim ban in this. It doesn't matter. It's just a pause in order to be able to invade.
Right, but the president took a lot of heat yesterday because he referred to it as a travel ban because his Department of Justice is trying to get it through the Supreme Court.
There's no room in counter-terror for political correctness. You get on a flight to go to Israel, El Al will rip you apart and they'll stare into your soul for 20 minutes or 3 hours if they have to. We're looking for behavior. My point is that the left has to look, you can hate anybody you want, and you can be, but as far as the security measures go, if they don't allow the president to do everything they can just to make him look bad, they don't allow him to at least give it a shot, we're going to fail.
Aaron,
and
how did Israel do it? How were you successful with
There's
that?
a lot of terrorism in Israel. People get killed, and it's very frequent. I responded, my first one.
So is it working then?
Yeah, we prevent hundreds and hundreds of attacks a year because
But it didn't stop the series of knife attacks. It
doesn't stop. We can't stop. We can listen. Just like General Diane said, you can't protect every bridge. You can't protect every pipeline. But here's the overall macro plan. You can exact a very high price. And the only thing that we learned that jihadis are afraid of is fear. There's a psychology involved here, and we have to start making them scared.
Can I ask you about this?
They go for soft targets.
There's one thing
you
that
can't take a soft approach to soft targets.
There's one thing that was added to the equation. They do it. They're going to go to heaven. The virgin story, all that stuff. 130 imams in London have refused to say the funeral prayers for these terrorists in London, which is unusual because usually they're performed on the deceased regardless of the circumstances. So will that send a message? Hey, nobody wants to send you to heaven if you're involved in something like this.
Look, it's a tough one because people can say what they want, and they can, and there's a free speech thing here that we're very proud of to have in this country. But okay, so you don't want to actually call this. You don't want to step up and support that this was terror, and you want to downplay. Okay, that's fine. You know what we're going to do? We're going to infiltrate your mosque. We're going to infiltrate your madrasas. We're going to do the same thing that Giuliani did with the mob. And let me explain how terrorists, they're like a mob. They're just more dangerous. We're going to flip every one of you. We're going to get you all on a payroll. We're going to find dirt and dig you out and find all your little dirt. And we're going to get you to a point where we're either going to get you out of this country or you're going to start flipping on every would-be terrorist. And that's how this works. So anybody who's not going to side with us and is going to downplay what just happened, every one of them needs to be targeted by the intelligence community, and we need to start flipping all of them.
How's that work, though?
Developing sources, payoffs, digging up, like I said, dirt on everybody's got a little skeleton in the closet. It's a dirty business.
Ramadan just got started. It's going to be a long month, sadly. They're off to a roaring terror start. Aaron Cohen, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. All right, straight ahead. Tom Shalhoub, stand-up comic, grew up being tied to a tree by his mom and with a dad who called
he calls Darth Vader with a Boston accent. Now he's out with a brand new book. It's all there, and he's straight ahead.
And is it time for the president to shift into high gear on health care and tax reform? Stuart Varney's.
Good morning. Welcome back to Fox and Friends. We have some quick headlines for you. Hillary Clinton is under investigation once again. The Senate Judiciary Committee launching a probe into her actions as Secretary of State. The Daily Caller reporting Clinton pressured government officials in Bangladesh to drop a corruption investigation into Muhammad Yunus, a businessman and Clinton Foundation donor. The Prime Minister telling Circa News Clinton threatened her over the phone. All right, stop what you're doing. Take a look at this video. This is an insane water slide move. A guy shoots out of the tube, glides across the pool without sinking. Watch again. Take a look. There he goes, gliding across, stands up. Wait, he's not done. Puts on his shirt without missing a beat. This clip from Jamaica is going viral. A lot of people, though, questioning whether or not it's real. We want you to be the judge. Make sure you let us know on Twitter or Facebook. And guys, if I can just say this, I actually went to this girl's Twitter account, Morgan, and she's claiming it's real. She claims she doesn't know him, that she was just there to shoot the video. So
you be the judge.
There you have it.
All right, thanks, Jillian.
I bet it is real.
All right.
I bet it is.
Meanwhile, whatever happened to health care and tax reform?
The president headed to Capitol Hill to address both today the Senate and the House.
All right, Stuart Varney, should we be optimistic? You're getting set to host Varney and Company from 9 to noon today on Fox Business.
Please, can President Trump bring the Republican Party together, bring Republican leadership into a meeting with him this afternoon, and let's get going with tax reform? Odds are against it, because the Republican Party is divided, and the Republican Party and everybody else is distracted by President Trump's tweeting.
I understand why they would be divided, maybe on health care, but why on tax reform? Because tax reform can save anyone who pays taxes, will save you money and fewer brackets, so everyone's going to be affected that pays taxes, and it's going to lower your taxes.
Yes, but the Republican Party cannot agree what form tax reform should take. Should it be just a simple cut in corporate tax rates and individual tax rates, just simple tax cuts? Or should it be paid for with a border tax or a consumption tax of some sort? The two wings of the Republican Party are miles apart on this. They do not agree on what kind of tax reform we should have, and the president faces an uphill struggle trying to bring them together when he's tweeting about travel bans overnight and distracting people from what's really going on with our economy. Can we just please remember something? The core of the president's appeal in the election last year was cut taxes and get the economy going. That is Republican bread and butter. Surely. And now we find we're in great trouble getting any kind of tax reform done this year.
You know, one of the things the Democrats are much better at than the Republicans, and that is having a unified front. Because, as you said, the Republicans are split, but they got to remember what was it, Benjamin Franklin, who said we got to hang together or we're going to hang separately?
Yes, that is true. But this Republican Party also has to deal with a Republican president who tweets wildly overnight about things which distract from the basic goal of tax reform. I'm sorry to complain about it, but, that's the situation.
You got to quote as you see it, but listen, those tweets actually, they distract because they oftentimes they launch into investigations. But the administration said health care this summer, by September, tax reform. That's what they put out yesterday. And that's what they hope for today.
That looks very unlikely at this point. Look, I think that the meeting this afternoon will be the Republicans telling the president as much as the president tells the Republicans. I think the Republicans are going to say, Mr. President, you've got to stop with the distraction. You laid off the Twitter right before the election last year, and you won. You laid off the Twitter when you did your foreign trip, and it was a success. Lay off it again, and let's get tax reform done. I think that's the message the Republicans will deliver to the president.
It's interesting. You do know that a lot of his base loves the Twitter stuff. Just because you go above the head of everybody else and you go right into people's smartphones.
But it's what you do. It's not that you're doing it.
This is politics. You're dealing with politics here, not business. This is not a business negotiation. This is not a statement of, we will do this. This is politics. You've got to take care of D.C. You've got to take care of the swamp, even though you hate it. You've got to operate in that swamp. And I think that's the message the Republicans will deliver.
I think that when the president tweets, though, about the 7-country border, 6-country ban, his point is, my hands are tied. I was elected for certain reasons, and I'm not able to get anything passed that I think is best for our country.
I see the point. It's still a distraction.
All right. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Critics say the courts blocking President Trump's immigration executive order are playing politics, but could the U.S. Supreme Court have the same problem? Judge Andrew Napolitano is going to weigh in on that straight ahead.
And what made Tom Shalhoub such a successful stand-up comic and, dare I say, singer? He grew up being tied to a tree by his mom.
Of course.
Now he's finally ready to talk about it.
I'm ready to fly, but I ain't got wings.
Tom Shalhoub grew up when dads were mean, when moms were tough, and playgrounds were rough.
And in his new book, it's called Mean Dads for a Better America. He says that's exactly what helped him get through life.
Joining us right now is Fox News contributor Tom Shalhoub. Tom, I know your mom and dad are watching right now in Arizona. They have not seen the book.
Yes.
What are they going to learn about how you grew up as a child in their house?
Well, you know, I don't think they're going to be mad because, I mean, I did have a mean dad.
Though.
Oh, I don't know because I didn't even let them read it. I'm not going to let them read it ahead of time. They're not going to edit my book.
They'll send you to your room.
But in all of our teases, we're saying your mom tied you to a tree. I'm sure she's like mortified.
What happened? I was tied to a tree, but this is not a how-to book.
Why?
Yes. I'm not saying you should tie your kids to a tree. I'm saying I was tied to a tree, and look, I'm fine.
What did you do?
Well, look, she wanted to let me play outside. I needed to get vitamin D. Look at my skin.
Right.
So she wanted to get her work done. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had 5 kids. She had to get the work done. She wants the kid to play in the yard. She doesn't want me to get hit by a car, so she ties me to a tree. It's just a common sense solution.
With a very long rope, right?
Yes,
so you can play in the backyard.
She did let you loose one day, and what did you do? You ran into the traffic.
I did go into the street. And people, you know, there was a guy honking his horn. People didn't get out of their cars. They didn't, you know, kids weren't as precious as they are today.
Right.
So it's just like honk, honk, get out of my way, kid. My mother came out on the porch. I walked right by her into the house. I came out with the leash and I handed it back to her. I knew where I was going.
What about your father, Darth Vader with a Boston accent?
My dad used to wake me up with his breathing. That's how we woke up on Saturday morning. He'd say, get in the car. We'd get in the car. And we didn't know where we were going. He wouldn't tell us. You know, wherever he went, that was okay with us.
Was he mean?
He was a mean dad, but all dads were mean in the 70s.
Ultimately, they had a goal, right?
They were raising children, and, you know, there were so many kids around. My dad had 5 kids, and he was a disciplinarian. But you learn later. The thing is, mean dads, they're willing to wait 50 years for a thank you. You know what I mean?
You're not going to get it in 20.
Exactly. You know, it's that thing. The TV shows, they always end with the happy family. That's not the way it ends.
Right.
It's like, you know, I was mad at my dad. He wouldn't let me quit my paper route. I wanted to quit. I didn't want to do that paper route every day, so I'm quitting my paper route.
Oh, the Shalhoubs are not quitters, he said, right?
He says, no, you're not quitting. And I tell you the truth, I'm still mad at him about that, but maybe I'll get over it.
Right, not
but
quite yet.
The thing is, they're willing to discipline their kids because they're playing the long game.
Right.
And, you know, I want to be a meaner dad. Dads aren't as mean today, but I think it's good for you.
The funny thing is, I was watching your show for all these years. Now you're on radio. You read this book. I've loved you. But now I love you even more because we can all relate to this.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's...
You're not saying you had a mean dad, did you?
Well, my dad was a disciplinarian.
All dads
He was
are
in the
meaner.
Army for 22 years. He was a disciplinarian.
That's why
But we
guys of
love
our
him.
generation
Yeah.
are so attached to Star Wars. You know, that made sense. Remember when Darth Vader was looking down at Luke Skywalker? I am your father. Kids like me were sitting in the movie theater thinking, yeah, that makes sense.
That is my dad.
Yeah.
Now, Tom, tonight you got a book launch at where? Caroline's?
Caroline's Comedy Club. Caroline's on Broadway. And people are going to come, and everybody gets a book.
Wow.
We're going to do stand-up. We get some great old red-eye guests, and we're going to have fun and launch the book. So this is
and Tom, you could also see him on the Tonight Show. You're a singer.
that's what. Yeah, we
Barbershop Quartet.
We sing Barbershop with Jimmy Fallon.
Fantastic.
That's
All right.
awesome.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Thanks so
Sorry
much.
about your
A
childhood.
message you want to say? I'm sorry to your mom.
I know, Mom.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Coming up next, Judge
Came out
Napolitano. Come on up here. You're our next contestant.
Yeah,
on
come
And
Fox
later,
News.
Dan Bongino and Laura Ingraham.